Abaye Omer. So our shir this morning is dedicated by Malka and Semi Esterson in memory of their parents Ludwig Stiefel, Yitzchak Leib, and Aaron Cohen, and Hinda Esterson, Hinda Bas Hemach Ephraim. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah, the Neshamos will have an aliyah in the families and so Abaye Omer, Abaye said the fine. So let's remember again, we're still trying to attribute authorship of our Breisa. So the Gemara says the following: Abaye Omer, Abaye says, "I feel Tim Rabbi Yehuda." Could be that the Breisa even reflects the view of Rabbi Yehuda. So let's remember again, the backdrop to this was a riveting, mamish, I don't use that word loosely, a riveting machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon about the kapara of Yom Kippur. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that the sira mishtaleach la'azazel, ultimately again, the goat that's sent off the cliff, the goat that is sent off the cliff, is mechaper for everyone, all Jews, Kohanim, Yisraelim. Then it's the par of the Kohen Gadol that is mechaper for Tumas Mikdash v'Kadasha v'Kohanim, and Sir Hana'aseh B'fnim, ultimately again it's mechaper for Tumas v'Kadasha v'Yisrael. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon, on the other hand, says no. Rabbi Shimon says the Seir is only mechaper for who? Only mechaper for Yisraelim. Kohanim get kapara for Shar Averos through the vidui of the par, get kapara for Tumas Mikdash v'Kadasha from the offering of the par itself, and Yisraelim get kapara for Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav from the Seir. That's, I told you, that's riveting machlokes. Now we're trying to figure out, ultimately, we have a Brisa, we have a Mishnah. We're trying to figure out whose view is reflected in what. Abaye Amar Abaye says, I feel Rabbi Yehuda. Even this Brisa could reflect the view of even Rabbi Yehuda. Hachi Kama, this is what it means to say. Me'ata, Eilem kapara b'Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav. You might have thought that the Kohanim don't have kapara for Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav. Kishu Omer, when the pasuk says Yichaper, ala Kohanim, that ultimately refers to the Kohanim having kapara. Matzinu sheishlam kapara b'shar averos. So now I know that Kohanim achieve kapara for other averos. Ukimod matzinu sheishlam kapara b'shar averos. And the same way they have kapara for other averos. Kach yishlam kapara top of Yudalid b'tumas mikdash v'kadashav. So too they have kapara in cases of Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav. Also remember again, Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav is the case of where I either enter into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of Tumah unknowingly, or I consumed sacrificial or consecrated items in a state of Tumah unknowingly. So says the Gemara, Ubamahem miskapin, and ultimately again, through what do they achieve kapara? So the Gemara says, Mutav sheis kapara b'paro shal Aaron, shari hutshu michlalo eitzel beiso. So it makes more sense that ultimately, again, they go ahead and they achieve kapara through the par of Aaron. Why? Because ultimately, again, the Torah already says that the par of Aaron is mechaper for Aaron and his home. Beiso. Va'ayus karpu b'seir hana'aseh b'fnim, as opposed to them having kapara through the seir that's offered up on the inside of the Beis HaMikdash. Shaharei lohuter michlalo, because also we don't see that affects any level of kapara ultimately again by the Kohanim. Vim nafshecha lomar harehu omer beis Aaron baruch hu es Hashem. Excuse me. Vim nafshecha lomar, and if you want to say, then the pasuk says beis Aaron baruch hu es Hashem. So the Gemara asks, what does that mean? Umayim nafshecha lomar. What does that statement mean? V'chitema beis of ksiv. Maybe you'll say, how can you taina that the par is mechaper for all Kohanim? After all, the pasuk seems to be quite explicit in saying that what? That the par only atones for Aaron and his family. It says base Aaron by the par. Kulon kruyin beiso. All Kohanim are called the bayis. All Kohanim are called the house of Aaron. Shneimar beis Aaron baruch hu es Hashem. Yirei Hashem baruch hu es Hashem. Good. V'hai asher la'am lahachi Yehuda. But one second, is that pasuk asher la'am coming to teach us what you just said? Haimi boile dika'amar achmana mida'am lehavi. Ultimately, again, that phrase teaches us mida'am lehavi. We'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. It's on the right hand side. If you go right across from where we are in the Gemara, about 6 lines up, mida'am lehavi mishal tzibar v'lo mishal kohen gadol l'fisha par ba mishalo hutzach lor b'sir mishal tzibar. We'll say that comes to teach us that the seir ultimately has to come from communal funds, as opposed to the par, which ultimately comes from the funds of the Kohanim. To which the Gemara says, "Hahu me'ume'es adas b'nei Yisrael nafka." That's ultimately learned out from the phrase "ume'es b'nei Yisrael v'hai asher lo lahach Yehuda asa." But one second, does that asher lo come to teach us that the par is only mechaper on the Kohen Gadol? Haimi Bailey, that Mishal Asher Lo comes to teach us something else, which is L'chidisanya Mishalahu Mevi Ve'ino Mevi Mishal Tzibor. They will say when the Kohen Gadol brings the par, that par must be bought from his own money and cannot be bought from the money, collective money. Ve'ino Mevi Mishal Tzibor. Was actually quite an amazing halakha. The Kohen Gadol must purchase the par from his own funds, and those monies cannot be supplied by Am Yisrael. So the Gemara says, Yachal lo yavi mishal tzibor shirat tzibor miskabrin bo. So I might have thought the reason he can't bring the par from communal funds is because the community, the tzibor, is not mechap, does not achieve kapara through this par. Aval yavi mishal echav hakohanim she'echav hakohanim miskabrin bo. But the par can be brought from funds from his fellow kohanim, because after all they achieve kapara through this par. So therefore, again, they should be able to supply the money for it as well. Talmud Lomar Asher Lo. Therefore, the pasuk says the par belongs to the kohen, which means what Rabbi saying, that ultimately, again, the par has to come from. That the par has to come from the funds of the kohen gadol. Yachol lo yavi. I might have thought that ultimately, again, that although lechatchila you shouldn't purchase the par from communal funds, but if you did heavy kosher, but if you purchase the par from communal funds, then the par should still be kosher. To which the Gemara says, Talmud Lomar Shuv Asher Lo. Therefore, the pasuk says again when referring to the par that it is the par of the kohen gadol. Hakosov Shana Alav La'akev. The pasuk repeats this phrase Asher Lo to teach you that what? That is likuva. Namely, I will say that the par must be purchased from the monies of the kohen gadol. To which the Gemara says, Tana hachika kashile. This is really what the Tana was bothered by. Ma'ishna bida'am delo mechaper delo kachasi be mamona. Why is it, Abba say, that if the kohen gadol's par is purchased with communal monies, why is it that it does not affect kapara? Because Abba say, in order for it to be low, in order for it to be the kohen gadol's, it has to have cost the money. It has to delo kachasi be mamona. Ultimately, again, it didn't cost them any money. The Ka'amar Kulan, excuse me, the Aro Nami Lo Kachasi Meimona. But how could the Kohanim achieve Kapara through the par if it didn't cost them any money? To which the Gemara says, the Ka'amar Kulan Kruyin Beso. Everyone is considered to be ultimately, again, the family of Aaron Kohen. So we'll say, this is a very important takeaway. We'll get to Halacha L'Maisa in just a moment, but this is a very important takeaway, which is that the par of the Kohen Gadol of Yom Kippur must be purchased with his own money. Now that par, to be clear, that par affects kapara on behalf of all of the kohanim, not just on behalf of all of the kohanim, but the par, in this halacha l'maisa, the par must be purchased ultimately again with the monies of the kohen gadol. Bishlam Rabbi Shimon Hainu Dichsiv Trei Viduyin V'Dama Par. So according to Rabbi Shimon, I understand why there's two mentionings of vidui as well as the mentioning of the blood of the par. Chad Keneged Sihar Nasa Bifnim. So one vidui I will say is for the seir that's done on the inside. V'chad Keneged Sihar Nasa B'chutz. One vidui for the seir that's on the outside. V'chad Keneged Sihar Mishtalech. And one ultimately again for the seir that is sent into the wilderness. Okay, El Rabbi Yehuda Trei Viduyin V'Dama Par Lamali. But we'll say according to Rabbi Yehuda, ultimately again, why do I need two viduis as well as the Dama Par? So the Gemara says, Bechad Vidui V'Damo Sagya. It would be enough ultimately again for one vidui, one blood application. To which the Gemara says, Echado V'Echado Beso. One is for kapara for Aaron HaKohen, for the Kohen Gadol, and one is for kapara for the rest of the Kohanim. Okay, the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel Kachi Midas Hadin. No, I guess this is what the Midas Hadin. This is what justice, so to speak, says. Mutav Yavo Zakai V'Chaper Ala Chayiv. It is better for the innocent one to come and affect kapara for the guilty one, Va'al Yavo Chayiv V'Chaper Ala Chayiv, as opposed to the guilty one affecting kapara for the guilty one. In other words, that if Aaron HaKohen is going to affect kapara on behalf of his fellow Kohanim, it is better that what? It is better that he first achieves a level of kapara, he first be cleansed, let him be mechupar, and then ultimately again he could achieve kapara on behalf of his fellow kohanim. So both say. So bottom line, what's the halacha l'maisa from this sugya? And there is some very interesting halacha l'maisa. So number one, what we've already established is that the par of Yom Kippur must be purchased with the monies of the Kohen Gadol. And in fact, the Rambam in Hilchos Avodos Yom Kippurim, this is in Parakeh Halacha Yud Gimel, says the following: Par Yom Kippurim, Afa Pisha Kohen Gadol Kona Mishalosh Nemar Parachatas Shalo Hamakom Hifkir Mamono Bo Lechol Echa VaKohanim. So this is very interesting. Even though the Kohen Gadol has to buy it with his own money, nevertheless, it becomes the property of all the Kohanim. All the Kohanim. She'ila lo haya lahen bo shutfis lo haya miskaprin bo. Because why? Because the only way for the Kohanim, ultimately again, to have kapara through this par is if they have a financial interest, a financial ownership. Therefore, again, even though it's an interesting idea, even though the Kohen Gadol must buy it, but lemais must come from his money, but lemais again, Chavish Baruch Hu made it the property of all Kohanim. So the Rambam goes on to discuss the various intricacies of this, but that's halach l'maisa number one. Par must come from the monies of the Kohen Gadol, but it is mechaper on all Kohanim. They will say, what about in the machlokes Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yehuda? Who do we paskin like? So the Rambam is actually Hilchos Tshuva, which is interesting. Hilchos Tshuva parak aleph halacha beis. So the Rambam writes, Seir hamishtalech lefishu kapara al kol Yisrael. We'll say ultimately again, we paskin. The Rambam paskin is like Rabbi Yehuda, namely that the Seir hamishtalech is mechaper for everyone. It is mechaper ultimately again for Kohanim, for Yisraelim, for the entire Klal Yisrael. So again, then you have the other karbanos ultimately, like the Sira Nasa Bifnim and the Par, that are mechaper for other specific averos regarding Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav. We pass like Rabbi Yehuda that the Sir Mishtalech is mechaper for all of Klal Yisrael. What it's mechaper for, chamuros, kalos, asabat shuva, lo asabat shuva. So that already the Gemara already the Gemara on Yud Beis and with Beis and Yud Gimel and Aleph already began to speak about this a little bit. The Rambam Hilchos Tshuva goes through this in quite an exhaustive fashion. What it's mechaper on, not our topic for today, but just know we pass like Rabbi Yehuda that the Sir Mishtalech is mechaper for all of Klal Yisrael. Bosai Hadrun Aloch. Shevuos Shtayim. Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. We finished the first parak of Shevuos. And Baruch Hashem, we're now on to the second parak. Let's go back to this. It says the Gemara. Here we go. We'll say, so now actually we're picking up on some of the topics mentioned in the first parak. I know some of you are worried that we were going to be finished with the Tumah Sugyos. I have good news for you, we're not finished. We're not finished, there's plenty more Tumah to go around. So here we go, Yediyos HaTumah. It's good, Yediyos HaTumah Shtayim Shein Arba. So also remember again, going back to the first Mishnah. This is really just picking up on what we had in the first Mishnah about Yediyos HaTumah Shtayim Shein Arba. That the cases Rabbi Osai of Tumah awareness are two that are four. Now here the Mishnah doesn't explain it because the Mishnah presupposes we know what it's talking about from the first parak. So just a quick review. So remember, the two biblically paradigmatic cases are where there's a lapse of Tumah awareness. I became Tameh. I knew I became Tameh. Then I forgot that I was Tameh. And during that lapse of awareness, either what? I entered into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of Tumah, or I consumed something that was either consecrated or sacrificial in nature. After the transgression, I realized what I did, and then what? I become aware again. So we'll say, so that's the biblically paradigmatic case, because what's the halacha in that case? Those cases are carbon ola v'yored. Remember again, from our first parak days, that's the idea betchila, the idea besof, v'he'lam bein sayim. There's awareness in the beginning, awareness in the end, and a lapse of awareness there in the middle. So those are the two biblically paradigmatic cases. What's the case shein arba? We'll say, what's the two additional cases? The two additional cases are where ultimately, again, I knew that I was tameh, but I did not realize that I was entering into the Beis HaMikdash. Or I realized that I was tameh, but I did not realize that what I was eating was in fact consecrated or sacrificial. So those are the two cases that are really four cases. It says the Mishnah, Yediyos Tumah Shtayim Shein Arba. So the cases of Tumah are two biblically paradigmatic cases that ultimately are four cases in total. So what are the cases? Nitma v'yada. So we'll say a person becomes tameh. He's aware that he's tameh. We'll say we're operating off the principle that the only way to be chayiv a carbon ola v'yored is what? Is if there's yediyah betchila. If there's no yediyah betchila, if a person didn't have initial awareness that they became tameh, then ultimately, again, remember that's where we get into Yom Kippur being mechaper for such a transgression like that. So nitma v'yada, a person becomes tameh and he's aware of his tumah. V'nel ma mimenu, and then ultimately he forgot that he was tamei. So v'nelma manatuma, then he forgot that he was tamei. V'zochar es hakodesh, and he remembered ultimately, but he realized, meaning he forgot to tuma, but ultimately realized that what he was consuming was consecrated or sacrificial in nature. Or ne'ela mimenu hakodesh, or I will say he forgot that what he was eating was kodesh. V'zochar es hatuma, but he did know that he was tamei. Or ne'elmu mimenu zevazeh, v'achal es hakodesh v'lo yada. Or we'll say he forgot that he was tamei, and he forgot that what he was eating was kodesh, or that he was in the Beis Hamikdash. And what happens? V'lo yada, umisha achal yada, and then afterwards he remembers, harizeh ba'olav yored. We'll say all of these cases ultimately again will result in an obligation to bring a carbon olav yored. Nitma v'yada, as he became tamei. He knew that he became tamei. V'ne'elma mimenu tuma. And what happens? He forgets. He has a lapse of awareness that he's tamei. V'zachar es hamikdash, but he remembered that ultimately again he was in the Beis Hamikdash. So we'll say again, this is yidiyah betchila, helam ben sayim, yidiyah ben besof, ne'elam mimenu mikdash. He forgot about the base. He forgot about the fact that he was standing in the Beis Hamikdash. V'zachar es tamei, he remembered that he was tamei. V'ne'elam mimenu zeh v'zeh, or he forgot that he was tamei and he forgot that he was in the Beis Hamikdash. V'nichnas lamikdash v'lo yada. He walked into the Beis Hamikdash and he did not know. Umishiyatze yada, and when he came out of the Beis Hamikdash he did know. What's the halacha? Harizeh ba'olav yored. Ultimately, again, this individual will be chayiv a carbon olav yored. So we'll say all the Mishnah is just simply doing is just giving me all the different manifestations of this type of case. All of these are cases where there's yidiyah betchila, yidiyah besof. I realized that I was tamei in the beginning. I forgot about my tumah, or I knew about my tumah, but I forgot I was in the Beis Hamikdash. Whatever variation it is, and then I remember afterwards. So then, at the end of the day, again, there's a carbon olav yored obligation in these circumstances. Good. We'll say weiter. Bless you. Echad hanichnas la'azara, ve'echad hanichnas la'tosefes hazara. We'll say, oh, now this gets very interesting. Now it gets even more interesting. Person entered into the Azara. So the Azara is the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. Or person went into the Tosefes HaZara. So we'll say Tosefes HaZara means what? The areas added on to the Beis Hamikdash. Remember again, we spoke about this in our Sanhedrin days. In other words, we'll say, what the Mishnah is picking up on over here is the following. Then when we speak about illegal entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of Tumah, so the Beis Hamikdash, we'll say, is really primarily comprised of three areas. There is really four areas. There's the Harabayis in general, right? There is the Azara, which is the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. There is ultimately again the Kodesh, which is the inside of the structure, and of course they call it Shakadoshim. So we'll say, so the idea over here is certain tumas are already problematic even on just Harabayis, without going into the Azaras. But the Gemara says over here, Echad nichnas la'azara. Why do you enter into the Azara, the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash? Or if you go into any of the places that were added on to the Azara. Now, what does that mean? Remember from our Sanhedrin days that there is the ability upon this. The Sanhedrin has the license, has the ability to add on area to the Azaras, to increase the size of the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. But in order to do that, Shimosifin al Ha'ir va'al Ha'azaros, you could only expand the boundaries of Yerushalayim and only expand the boundaries of the Azaras, Ela b'melech, v'navi, v'urim, v'tumim, v'sanhedrin shel shivim v'echad. I will say you need the king. We'll discuss the scope of this, but you need the king, the prophet, Urim v'tumim. Also remember, Urim v'tumim means the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol with the 72-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu tucked in there. Sanhedrin of 71 judges. Ubishtei todos, and you have to bring 2 toda loaves. Again, we're going to discuss what all of this means. Ubishir, and I will say, b'pashtas you need shiras halaviyim. Ubeizdin mahalchin. So I'll say, so what the Gemara is saying, well, let's finish up. Ubeizdin mahalchin, and Beizdin goes and walks around. Ushtei todos acharehen. The 2 todas are behind them. V'chol Yisrael acharehem. And all of Klal Yisrael follows behind them. So we'll say, what seems to be happening over here is that the Mishnah is describing the process through which you can enlarge the Azaras, through which you can enlarge the courtyards of the Beis Hamikdash. So you see again, this is quite a procession. It sounds like it requires the king, the prophet, Urim v'tumim, Sanhedrin of 71, 2 todos, Shir, and the procession is based in walks. The two dodos are behind them, and all of Klal Yisrael walks behind them. Amud Beis, Yodal Amud Beis. Hapenimis ne'acheles. Shavuos, so the inner loaf is what it's, again, we're going to define all of this, but the inner loaf is consumed. Again, Shavuos, the Pashas, when I'm talking about a toda, where the carbon toda comes with multiple loaves, the inner loaf is consumed, vachitzona nisrefes, and the outer loaf is burned. V'choshlo na'ases b'cholelu, and I will say any time, ultimately again, that the azara was enlarged without going through this process, hanichnas l'sham ein chayiv aleh. Somebody who walks into the azara in the state of tumah is not chayiv. That's another way of saying what? Any time that you go ahead and you enlarge the azara without this process, then what? It's not the azara. Or else it doesn't have kedushas beis hamikdash, and therefore, if one were to enter into this space while being tamei, one would not be chayav. So again, I think we spoke about this last week. The greatest example of azara enlargement without proper protocol is right. Hurdus was Herod. Right. Remember again, the Harabayas as we have it today is the Harabayas ultimately constructed by Hurdus, which was double the size, more than double the size of the original size of the Harabayas. So again, those who I spoke about this over Shevuos. So those who go ahead and feel that one is permitted to go and enter up on Harabayas today, one of the dramatic reasons that one is certainly permitted, well, according to some, one is permitted to go at least around the outskirts of the Harabayas is because that area was never sanctified as Kedushas Harabayas. Now, Herod thought he was sanctifying it as Kedushas Harabayas, but at the end of the day, he didn't follow protocol. And as we spoke about last week, he didn't follow protocol for one simple reason. It requires the Sanhedrin. Hordus had killed them. He wiped out virtually the entire Sanhedrin. So just you should know, just as an aside, that's why again, even many of the leading poskim will hold that entry on Harabayas is prohibited. More often than not, like Rav Avaji Yosef, more often than not, the issue is not with the halachic issue of entering into Harabayas. It's a greater concern that if people become too regular with entering into Harabayas, it's just a matter of time until people trespass upon some of the actually forbidden areas, because there still are mamish areas where you cannot enter in a state of Tumas Meis, which we all are. If people become too regular in doing it, ultimately, again, people will inevitably, which happens already today, people will inevitably go into areas where they're not allowed to go. Okay, not a discussion. Anyway, it says the Gemara. 2 dots, Yudal Amud Beis, still the Mishnah. Nitma Bazara. So we'll say, now this is actually another interesting subject, which the Mishnah is going to introduce us, and obviously we'll have to go ahead and spend more time on it in the Gemara. Nitma Bazara, we'll say, means a person who becomes tamei inside the Beis HaMikdash. See, up until now, what we were focusing on is people who become tamei outside of the Beis HaMikdash and then entering into the Beis HaMikdash. What happens if I become tamei in the Beis HaMikdash itself? Rashi says over here, Nitma Ba'azara, second line down from the top, V'yada shenitma. I know I'm tamei. We'll say, you say, how could this happen? Never, I'm in the Beis HaMikdash and the person next to me drops dead. Right, and I catch him in my arms as he drops dead. Or there's a sheretz and I pick it up. Whatever the Metzias is, I become tamei inside the Beis HaMikdash. What's the protocol for tumah inside the Beis HaMikdash? So what happens? So nitma ba'azara, v'ne'alma mimeno tumah. So we'll say what happens, and then after becoming tamei, I have a lapse of awareness in my tumah. So I was aware at the time I became tamei. Then there was a lapse of awareness afterwards. V'zachar es HaMikdash, but I remember that I was still in the Beis HaMikdash. Or Ne'elam imena mikdash, v'zachar tumah, or I forgot I was in the Beis HaMikdash. And what? I remembered the tumah. Or ne'elam imenu zevazeh, or I forgot tumah and the Beis HaMikdash. V'ishtachava, and I prostrated myself. In other words, the idea of v'ishtachava means I didn't run out to the Beis HaMikdash. I tarried there for some amount of time. O sheshah, b'chdei ashtachava, or I stood there long enough for the amount of time that it would have taken to prostrate myself. O ba lo ba'arucha, or I took the long way out, the long road out of the Beis HaMikdash. As Rashi points out over here, or shabalo ba'arucha, sheyatzal derech arucha sheyish k'tzar min alatis. There was a shorter way for me to exit the Beis HaMikdash, but a dafka chose the longer way. Chayiv. But in all of these cases, I will be chayiv. Now again, obviously we have to discuss what the parameters of this case are. But Rashi says over here, chayiv afilu lo shat chila v'shur amalu halach lamoshe misinai. It says we're going to see these shiurim. So what the Mishnah seems to be saying is the following: that halacha lemaisa, if I become tamei in the Beis HaMikdash, so apparently there is a window that I have to get out of the Beis Hamikdash and be free of Tumah liability. If I tarry in the Beis Hamikdash longer than that window, that's when I have Tumah liability. It appears that the amount of time is the amount of time it takes to prostrate myself. Now again, we're going to define this in the Gemara, but if I go ahead and I stay there longer, or for that matter, I'm getting out as quickly as I can, but I take a longer path instead of a shorter one, then there is Tumah liability. Biktsara, if I take the shortest path out, pater, then ultimately, again, I will be pater. Again, we'll define the scope of this in the Gemara. Zohi mitzvah saseh sheba mikdash she'ein chayavin aleha. I will say this is a positive mitzvah in the Beis Hamikdash for which one is not chayiv. Now, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Zohi, Rashi says, Tuma she'ira lo b'soch hazara. When a person becomes tamei inside the Beis Hamikdash itself, Zohi mitzvah saseh sheba mikdash. This is an example, ultimately, again, of a mitzvah saseh. There's a mitzvah saseh to go ahead and send any tummy person outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Rashi says, "Shein chayav na'aleha beizin par b'hora v'lo kohen moshech in the first Gemara." So we'll say this is very interesting. The Mishnah is now introducing us to another concept. Again, more karbanos. I just want to tell you one thing, which is something to really look forward to. By the time we finish this Masechta, Baruch Hashem, we're going to feel like Mashiach is here. So much karbanos each and every day. And we're going to become so proficient in it. And we're going to see the inner intricacies of it. It's going to be gewaldic. So this is now a new karban. So this is what's called the special karban. We'll say the par that's brought when the Kohen Gadol or the Sanhedrin issues an erroneous ruling. If they allow us to do something that we're not allowed to do, there is a special par that is brought. What the Mishnah seems to be saying over here is if the Kohen Gadol or the Sanhedrin issued some type of ruling concerning a person who becomes tamei in the Beis Hamikdash itself, there would not be the par liability would not devolve upon them. Again, we're going to discuss the scope of this. We'll say, what would be an example, or what is the mitzvahs asay by nida that ultimately, again, Beizin would be chayiv for. And I will say, now look at Rashi for just a moment. The Ezvei mitzvah asay shebenida, I did the Tanah Baharius in chayavan al asay shebemikdash, aval chayavan al asay shebenida. Katani hacha ezo mitzvah shebemikdash ezo shebenida. So we'll say, Rashi's pointing out, the Gemara is going to pick up on this. This Mishnah seems to be a continuation or picking up from Maseches Harius. In Maseches Harius, the Gemara is discussing there about under what circumstances Beizin has to bring the par offering for issuing an erroneous ruling. So apparently when it comes to Tumas Mikdash, if they make an erroneous ruling, they don't have a par obligation. However, if they make an erroneous ruling by Hilchos Nida, they do have to bring the par offering. What's the erroneous ruling by Nida that would require them to ultimately bring the par? We'll say if a man is having relations with his wife, who is a Tahora. Tahora means she's not a Nida. And she says to him in the midst of relations, Nitmesi, I feel that I've become a Nida. We'll say, so what's the case over here? Again, we'll delve into this in the Gemara. She has a Hargasha. Without getting into all the intricacies over here, Hargasha means a woman has a sensation that she is a Nida. What that sensation means, I will say, is a major machlokes harishonim about what Hargasha is. Just very quickly in Hilchos Nida, what it does not mean is zivas davar lachmi b'chutz. It doesn't mean that she feels moisture on the outside of her body. That's not a Hargasha. Hargasha means she feels something internal. On a literal level, it's psichas pia makar. It's the opening of the uterus to allow out uterine blood. So we'll say, so whatever, well again, we'll get into this in the Gemara, but Lamaisa, they're in the couples in the middle of relations, and she says to her husband, Nitmesi, I feel like I have just become a Nida. So we'll say, what's the halacha? So here you have an interesting and complicated case. So an act of relations began in a permitted fashion. Now in the midst of the act of relations, she's essentially saying, I'm a Nida. We'll say the halacha is, if a man has relations with his wife who is a Nida, that's a Chiyuv Kares. So what does a person do in this situation? So listen to this. Upireish miyad. So if the husband immediately withdraws, in other words, he immediately withdraws from the act of relations, chayiv. But it's actually quite interesting. See, one would think logically, then what happens over here? In this case, she's a Nida, that he should literally withdraw from the act of relations immediately. He can't do that. Why? Because it will say, if he withdraws from the active relations and is still in an aroused state, ultimately, again, that withdrawal is as pleasurable as the active relations itself. So what's the problem? The problem in that case is that then he's deriving pleasure from an active relations with a woman who is potentially a nida. So what does one do in such a situation like this? So Rashi says over here, Rashi says chayiv. So Rashi says chayiv ela ya'amod below disha ad sheyamos ha'ever. Rather, the halacha Rashi says over here is that a man has to wait, ultimately again, until the arousal dissipates, v'yifrosh below koshi. And ultimately, again, he withdraws after, again, the Aver is no longer in its aroused state. V'zeu aseh. So we'll say, so ultimately, again, says the Gemara, this would be a situation, again, we'll get into this more in the Gemara, but I will say this would be a case where if Beis Din were to deliver an erroneous ruling over here, so what? So there would be a chiyuv of a par in that situation. So again, in this situation over here, where he's in the middle of relations, she becomes a nida, the halach is he has to wait until arousal dissipates, and then ultimately withdraws after that. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, hasheretz v'ne'ela mimeno. So we'll say, okay, so now back to sheretz, a little bit of like a seesaw over here. Rabbi Eliezer says, hasheretz v'ne'ela mimeno. So we'll say, remember again, now we get into tumas sheretz. So the pasuk says, so we'll say, we're talking about tumas sheretz. So the pasuk says that if a person will come in contact with a sheretz, v'ne'elam mimenu, and the tuma is hidden or obscured from him, al ha'elam sheretz chayiv. So we'll say if a person didn't realize, we'll say actually what this means. Al ha'elam sheretz, one is chayiv, v'no chayiv al ha'elam mikdash. But I will say one would not be chayiv for ha'elam mikdash in a case of tumas sheretz. What it seems to be saying over here is the following. If I came in contact with the sheretz and had a lapse of awareness about the sheretz, then I would be chayiv. But if I became tamei to my sheretz and had a lapse of mikdash awareness, I would not be chayiv. Again, we'll define what that means. Rabbi Akiva says, "V'ne'elam mimenu v'hu tamei." Rabbi Akiva says, "Al he'elam tuma chayiv." If there's a lapse of awareness about the tuma, I would be chayiv. V'nu chayiv al he'elam mikdash. But I'm not chayiv ultimately again for what? For he'elam mikdash. Rabbi Shmuel will say, so we'll have to see in the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva seems to be saying the same thing as Rabbi Eliezer. What the distinction between their opinions are, we'll have to see in the Gemara. Rabbi Shmuel says, v'ne'elam shtei pamim. Says v'ne'elam twice. L'chayiv al he'elam tuma v'al he'elam mikdash. Teaching that no, I am chayiv both for he'elam tuma and he'elam mikdash. So Shavuos means, in other words, what Rabbi Yishmael is saying is, Tumah Sheretz is no different than any other kind of Tumah, which means that in general by Tumah, I'm chayiv ultimately again, whether there's a lack of Tumah awareness or whether there's a lack of Mikdash awareness. I will be chayiv a carbon all of the already in any of those cases. Fine. Says Gemara, Amar Papa. So Papa said to Amar Papa Abaye, Shtaim Shein Arba, Shtaim Shein Shei Shavyin. So let's remember again, we're going back to the beginning of the Mishnah. So the beginning of the Mishnah says that in Tumah, there are two cases that are four. So remember again, the two biblically paradigmatic cases were what? Where again a person becomes tamei, and I forgot that I was tamei, I entered into the Beis HaMikdash, that's case one. Or I consumed some type of consecrated sacrificial item, that's case two. And I remembered afterwards, I have to bring a carbon olav yoreh. Which then, Gemara says, those are the two biblically paradigmatic cases, which then yield two more cases, which what will say. I remembered that I was tamei, but what? I forgot that I was in the Beis HaMikdash, or I forgot that I consumed consecrated items. So the Gemara says there's more than four cases altogether. There are 6 cases. After all, again, Yediel Satuma Tchila V'Sof. There's a case where a person was aware of his tumah beginning and end. Yediel Zakodesh Tchila V'Sof. Or a case where a person was aware of the Kodesh, right? Ultimately, again, that I was consuming consecrated items, Tchila V'Sof, at the beginning and the end. Yedias Mikdash Tchila V'Sof. There's an awareness of the Beis HaMikdash beginning and the end. So we'll say those are 6 different cases. Or the Tamech, by using that logic, Tidni Havyon. The truth is there are 8 cases. Da'ika Tuma de Kodesh v'Tuma de Mikdash Tchila V'Sof. To which the Gemara says, so we'll say the point is the Gemara is making over here. If you want to go through all the variations of cases, you could come up ultimately again with 8 cases. Halo kasha, that's not a contradiction, that's not a kasha. Shem Tuma Achasi. I will say the cases of Tuma ultimately again could be grouped into larger categories. Mikomakom Shesavin. Okay, so even if you want to say it's not 8 cases, at least it's going to be 6 cases. You're right. Altogether, you could come up, I will say, with 8 different cases for Tuma liability. Arboy Kamaisa, Dilo Maisa Leili Karban Lo Kachashiv. We'll say the first 4 cases that the Gemara just mentioned before, which are cases that do not result in carbonic liability. the Mishnah does not discuss. Arba Basrai said the Maisun Leilidei Karban Kachashiv. The Gemara suggests over here that the only cases mentioned in the Mishnah are what? The cases that result in carbonic liability, that will result in a carbon ola v'yorei. So Einachinami, you could come up with many more variations of Tuma cases, but what? They will not result in carbonic liability. Because of that, ultimately, again, the Mishnah does not say this. So therefore, again, point number one the Gemara is making is that the only cases included in the Mishnah are cases which will result in a carbon ola v'yorei. The Ikadamri. There are others who explain. Amar Papa, the Olam Tamni Havyon. Papa says, no, in reality, you're right. There are a total of 8 cases. Varba Kamaisa, the Lestnu Bechalatora Kula, Kachashiv. The first 4 Abosai, which are cases that do not apply in the rest of Torah, are mentioned. Arba Basrai said this Bechalatora Kula, Lo Kachashiv. But ultimately, again, the second 4 cases, which do show up in the rest of Torah, are not mentioned. Now, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Arba Basraisa. So we'll say the 4 last cases, which are cases of Yidios Shebasof. We'll say these are cases ultimately again where a person has awareness after the fact. So Rashi says over here, Isna b'chala Torah she'in adam mevi chatas ela imke nodolo shechata. So we'll say the cases, the second 4 cases, which are the cases of Yidia Basof, that concept applies in Kala Torah Kula. Why, Rabbi say? Because a person ultimately will only bring a chatas if what? If he becomes aware that he sinned. However, Arba Kamaisa Rasha's Yidio Shebetchila, which are the cases where I have Yidia Betchila, I have awareness at the beginning, less than the B'chala Torah. I will say those cases don't apply. That principle does not apply in the rest of Torah. What does that mean? Rashi says, Sha'ochel Chelev B'shogeg. The person eats Chelev, which is a forbidden fat B'shogeg. Afilu lo noda lo al chaticha zuni olam shu Chelev. Ula achar achila noda lo chayev. We'll say ultimately again, a person ate Chelev. And what? B'shogeg. And he did not know in the beginning that it was Chelev, but then he finds out afterwards that it is Chelev, he will be Chayev a carbon. So what the Gemara is pointing out over here is the following. The only cases we're choosing to highlight over here are the cases which are unique in nature. I will say what's unique about Yedios Tumah, that you're only going to be Chayev a carbon if what? If there's Yedia Betchila. In any other case in the Torah, as long as at some point in time I find out that I did something wrong, what's the halacha? I have to bring a carbon chatos. Tumah is different. Tumah is different. And apparently, again, if I don't have Yediya B'tchila, if I don't have awareness at the beginning, even if I find out later on what I did, I will not have a chiyuv of a carbon ola v'yoret. So therefore, what the Gemara essentially says is the only cases the Mishnah chooses to include are cases which result in a chiyuv of a carbon ola v'yoret, and the only cases where there is a chiyuv carbon ola v'yoret is when? Is ultimately again when I have Yediya B'tchila. Okay, so now the Gemara asks an interesting question. Why did that papa? Ne'elmu mimenu hilchos tuma mahu. But listen to this case. What happens if, let's say, the case in question over here is, I didn't know the halachos of tuma. Now look at Rashi just a moment. Ne'elmu halachos tuma kishenaga b'sheretz v'yada shnagi b'sheretz aval eni yodeh shu tamer. But listen to this. This case is a little bit different. I know that I touched the sheretz, and I know that I walked into the Beis HaMikdash. Apparently, what don't I know? I don't know the halachas of sheretz. I don't know that a sheretz is tamei. So we'll say this is an interesting case. Up until now, we've only been dealing with cases where either there was a halama, I didn't know that I became tamei, or I didn't know that I walked into the Beis HaMikdash. In this case, I know that I became tamei, and I know that I walked into the Beis HaMikdash. I know both of these things. What's the piece of information that's missing? I didn't pay attention in Shir. Right? The case of that I did not go, I didn't know that a sheretz is metame. Says the Gemara, 1 second. We'll say, this is an amazing statement, by the way. So the Gemara says, Mao, hechidami, what's the case? Ilema delo yada isharetz tame itzradea tame. If you want to say it's a case of where he touched the sheretz, but he doesn't know whether that particular sheretz is metame. We'll say, so is it a sheretz which is metame, or is it a frog? We'll say, so a frog, for example, is not a sheretz tameya. So let's say he touched an animal and he didn't know, meaning is the question over here that he didn't know if it's a sheretz or it's a frog? So or that he didn't know if it's a sheretz that's tamei or if it's a frog that's not tamei. Zil kari beirafu. We'll say that's something that every single child learns in yeshiva. Everyone knows that a frog is not tamei and that a sheretz is tamei. So if you're talking about that type of ignorance, then he should have paid attention in yeshiva. In other words, and presumably, he did learn that growing up. And if you learn that growing up, Rabbi say, then that's not considered a helam. Look at Rashi. Zil kari beirav tinoko shabeis rabban korin hacholad va'achbar vatsav hilchach ein zu alamar. We'll say everyone in cheder learns the basic halachos of sheretz about which animals are shratim tmeim, which are not. Therefore, again, hilchach ein zu alamar. So we learned this before. Something you learned in your childhood, there is considered to be an innate awareness of that. Even if you momentarily forgot that information right now, that's not called helam. That's not called helam. Hilchach ein kanalam, Rashi says, v'yesh kan yediyah betchila. Ukisha'achal HaKodesh Nal Amanu Negir Rishona yesh kan yediyah betchila v'helam acharesh yodaba b'sayv yechav. So we'll say, if it's a case of where I forgot my childhood education, so we'll say something amazing, by the way. So it tells you that Chazal are teaching us is, if you learn something, I will say, and then if I learn something, and then I forget it, there is responsibility for having that knowledge. In other words, that once I learned it, I am responsible for retaining it. If I subsequently forget it, I can't claim ignorance. I can't claim ignorance. Ultimately, again, I am responsible for that information. So, Bepashtos, I learned things as a child, specifically, again, what's a sheretz, what's not a sheretz. If I subsequently forget that, I am chayev for that helam. But it's not considered to be as if I'm ignorant in that area. I know it, I forgot it, and therefore when I remember it, I'll be chayev a carbon olav yored. To which the Gemara says, what's the case? Kigon dinoga bechadash. What's a second wide line? The case must be is where I touched a lentil-sized piece of a sheretz. V'lo yada bechadasha imetame ilo metame. And I will say, what's the shayla? So the question over here is the shear. So I will say, this is a more intricate halachic shayla. Does a lentil-sized piece of sheretz convey tuma or not? Mai. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Kevan diyada demetame sheretz ba'olam yidiyahi. Oh, so we'll say, do I say that since I know that a sheretz is metame, but my only shayla is if this lentil-sized piece of sheretz is metame, so it's as if I have an awareness, and therefore I'll be chayiv. Oh, dilma kevan dechadasha lo yada imetame ilo metame halomehi. Or maybe we'll say the issue over here is that what? Since I don't know, does a lentil-sized piece of sheretz convey tumor or not? It's as if as what? There's a lapse of awareness, and therefore there should be a carbon olav yori. So we'll say, here's the interesting shayla. In this case over here, I know I touched a sheretz, and I know a sheretz is metame. What's the issue? The issue is I didn't touch a whole sheretz. I touched a lentil-sized piece of a sheretz, and I don't know the halacha. Does a lentil-sized piece of sheretz convey tumor or not? So we'll say, is that considered to be like a lapse of awareness, or is that considered to be like acute awareness? The nafkamina will be whether or not I'm chayav a carbon olav yori. To which the Gemara answers, Teiku. We'll have to save it for Eliyahu Hanavi, who should come to Karov to answer all of our kashas. So we'll say, we'll stop over here, and Meretz Hashem, we'll pick up right over here tomorrow morning. Just a reminder again, Chanukah's... No, change it to 6:30. Yeah, change it. Yeah, we're starting down at 6:30. So we'll say, so just a reminder that over Chanukah davening will start at 6:30, which means the daf of Meretz Hashem begin at 5:45 in the morning. Gan HaEmunah Meretz Hashem will resume after Chanukah.